Okay, so we've unbounded and we're going around and having a look at it. We've got a tiny little gap. You might be able to see on the close-up one. If we bring you in here, if we get it sitting just down in there, you might be able to see just down there. So we need to take care of that. And if we slowly move down this seam, we've got quite a nasty seam up there on the close-up. Then obviously we've got this one underneath we need to take care of as well. Now the thing with all these seam lines is you need to take care of them and do them properly, because it's in a very, very visible area. Obviously if you left this one at the top here, you'd see that extremely easy. Same with ones around the front end with the cowl underside, unless obviously you're going to have it upside down or on a mirror, you're not going to see it as much. But obviously it's well worth sort of taking care of them and doing them properly. Now there's lots of different ways you'll get people, and they'll mask up and put bits of filler in there. I must admit, I'm one of the type of guys who, when I do this, I may try and do it properly, hit it hard, get it done right, job done in one. So I've got quite a coarse file. And what we're going to do is just attack it all on. We've got no surface detail under here to worry about. It's all flat. But what we do, we can come in here and see exactly what we've got. And obviously with the filler dust, when it fills it up, you can see where the problems we've actually got. So we've got quite a nasty deep seam running down in here. Okay, which is probably, a lot of it could have been taken care with a bit more care on the dry fitting states, but certainly that's as tight as I could get in there. Now normally this one here, if the camera will lock in, come on camera, this one here you can see with this filler dust, normally you know, you might be able to get it in, you can put little strips of tiny bits of plastic card in there and all the rest of it, but sometimes, you know, it's well worth just doing it with a bit of filler and doing it properly. So what we've got here is a little bit of squadron green putty, okay, and we're not going to mess around with this at all. We're just going to put a blob on the bottom here, okay, and then I have got, you can use a knife and various things. I've got here just a piece of flexible metal, which I tend to use, which is getting a little bit old and long these days. So what we'll do, we're just going to cut this in half. Okay, and what we're going to do is just push this in and do it, lots of it. Don't need that bit a little bit too much. Okay, because it's on a nice flat area, we can get in here and attack it properly. So make sure you come in it from both sides. Okay, and it's done just like that. So what we do, we just take a touch more. Putty does go off, so make sure this one's getting probably to the end of its life. Okay, so that one is all fillered in and done. No real way around that. So what we do, we just trim that off like that. Keep the cap back on. Okay. Move those bits. I'll stick my hand in them. Okay, so it is a big one down there, as I said, no real way. Other ones, like we've got here at the front and that, we can use the good old-fashioned Mr. Surfacer. So this is the 1000. Obviously, I've spoken about this before. It does come in different thicknesses. This is the 1000, but there again, you can have other ones. Just grab a brush. Oops, that's it. Got an old brush here. As I said, they do a 500, which is a little bit thicker, right the way through to a 1200, which is very thin. So we're just going to put this down here. Quite thick, okay. We've got this little dent just down in here. We'll fill that up with it, and hopefully it'll take care of any little seams. Tiny little one at the front. Okay, so we've gone along, and then we just do this one down the front. Now I've already sanded these off gently. So this is just a over the top bit for those, okay, because they're the important ones where people are going to see them and notice them. Okay, and then round the back here we got a little tiny raised peg here, which we want to avoid. But we're keeping this flat, or as flat as we can. Okay, and we're just going to work up and down. Now if you have got thin sticks, this is quite a handy one for it, because it will get in here quite nicely. So you can just these nice thin ones in, and they tend to get in these areas quite nicely. Just sand in. And when you can't see the white filler dust anymore, you know you're sort of in there nicely. There we go, and then we can come back in, Mr. Surfer on the top. Get some of the thicker stuff off the bottom. Brush this down. Now the Mr. Surfacer itself will melt slightly the plastic because it is chemical. So don't come along with this too soon and try and get it out, otherwise you have all types of problem. Now we've got a little gap here at the back onto this photo etch. So what we're going to do, we're just going to blob a bit on the top. Okay, let that dry and then we'll have to come back to that area again, but we've got a little gap as well just down the side. So very carefully we're just going to try and get a smidgen of this in there, just a little bit, just to try and fill that gap up. As I say, it will sink back and things, so we can do that. We can go up here, we've got a little join over this cockpit area. All on. Okay, so that's those areas all done now. What we need to do now is literally leave that to go off nicely for a couple of hours at least. So we sit that like that. It can start going off, going hard, and all the other bits and pieces. In the meantime, as we said, what we've actually got are these other ones. Now the plan of attack for this is obviously we've got new riveting detail that is going to go on to the outside. Now these are these little holders, all these little dots that you see all over it. We're going to have to remove all of them and going to replace them, as we said, with these photo etch set ones. Okay, so it's going to be quite a long drawn out job to go all of these, but it'd be well worth doing it because it will improve the detail because they're a little bit boring for such a larger scale, and obviously you will see it. So it's going to be a massive long job to that. But what I don't want to do is have the model completely built up and having to sand and get into areas when we've got wings on it. So what we're going to do, we're going to put this base unit on, so we've got the clear part, it's just been inserted in there, and these wings, and because we're having it in the retracted position, we've nicked out these little bits in here, as it says in the instructions. It says there in number 9 on your instruction sheet, so just make sure you take them out, because in a minute what will happen, once that sanding's done, we can get this up and in, do the same for these joins as well. If there's any joins in there, we can take care of them at the same time. Okay, we can install the tail, and we can get that in, fitted into it. This underside part as well is going to go in, and get the rudder section all in there, complete and done. When that's done, what we can do, same thing again, we're going to come along with the filler, get that in, and we can work on the engine, and those bits are drying off, get rid of all those bits and get the photo etch on. Okay, so the filler's completely dry on this one, and to be honest, this has been on completely overnight to dry off. Now when you're taking any filler out, you know, obviously we said before, you have to weigh up the pros and cons of perhaps destroying any sort of detail and things like that that you actually have. So obviously don't worry too much on flat areas or rounded off, but if you've got something with lots of riveting detail around it and things like that, you maybe want to mask off some little areas if you're not confident about rescribing and re-putting in rivet detail. But on something like this, where it's a nice curved flat surface, it's not too much of a problem at all. So what we'll do, we just move that out a fraction. What we're going to do is come in, we've got an oldish file, as you can probably see here, and what we're going to do now is just do a little bit of sanding work just on the front, so keeping it nice and flat, okay, lightly rubbing, we're not pushing down heavy, and all we're going to do is first of all take off the sort of upper side to it all, okay. But what you want to make sure is this filler is completely dry. Like in this case we're using Mr. Surfacer, and on the bottom we used obviously normal, but what you want to make sure it's dry. If it's not, when you're sanding it, you actually end up pulling it out and leaving sort of, you know, areas like that, and it will just leave gaps in the actual thing. So it needs to be totally dry. Now, if you're in a situation where it's not doing too particularly much, I've got quite a coarser file here. So all we're going to do, lightly, we're not pushing down, we're letting the file do all the work, okay, and we're just taking off the upper areas until we're down to basic plastic. And that sort of speeds up that process, and then in with the finer files, okay, and we can take out. And what we're looking for is just plastic, something like that on the nose section, so it's completely gone. And then what we can do, we can come along then with something like this one, which is our polishing one, and this will take out all the panel lines, all the scratches that the files are made. Okay, and just leave us with very nice polished surface. And then if you come along, and then if you switch it over to the buffing side here, this will take us back to very nice, perfect, shiny plastic again, with no scratches in it at all. You see how you can see it's nice and glossy there on the nose, and that's literally just by giving it a buff. So we can do exactly the same on the rear one. So I'd say quite a coarse one to start with. Not getting too close to that photo etch stuff because we don't want to lift it out. Okay, but there again, this is just like a time saving one. So we just take it. This rear. So it's more like a rasping action than a polishing one for these coarser files. Okay, and then obviously what we're doing, we're coming along. And we'll take care of that one. So, okay, that's going to take a little bit more work just to bring that rear one up to speed, but we can show you on the front. So all we do then, take some black acrylic paint. Okay, now the reason for doing this is just an old trick I used to do many moons ago that's all sort of stuck with me. So we have a nice shiny front. All we're going to do is pop a little bit of black acrylic on there. Now the reason for using black, twofold. One, it dries probably the fastest of all the paints, which is quite handy. Secondly, it shows up very well against any other colour. So we just do that, we're just cleaning up the brush a sec. Give that a bit of a clean out, just like so. Okay, we just dry that off. A bit of blow just to speed up the drying time of that. Now I obviously wouldn't sand this right now because I want it to be totally dry, but this will make it handleable for what I'll show you next. Okay, so that's that done. All done, quite happy, and looking at it I can't see any obvious grooves or anything else like that. It all looks fine to me, but obviously when we polish it we might need to see something else. So what I've done here, I've already done it on the bottom half and these sections here. So if I do start with this front one, we're going to take here, we've got a polishing stick. If we use a new one you can probably see it a little bit easier. So we've got a polishing stick just like this. All we're going to do now is buff up this. Now I'm not using it wet, we're using it dry. Okay, but what this will do, it will show us any imperfections actually still left in it. So if we just bring you in, you might be able to see, we can just see just along here, this little black line is obviously still a very fine dent in the actual plastic work, so it's not totally smooth. But what this will do, it will show you if you've got any scratches still or anything else like that. And if you've got any scratches, you might be able to see them, just got a few little ones going across here. Then you can, obviously needs to be sanded in and buffed. But when it's all gone, hopefully like this now, you can actually see we've just got little tiny scratch marks, perhaps left just down here, just a little bit going on still down there. So obviously those ones there, you know, are going to need a little bit more. And it's not so much important on something flat like this, But obviously if we were coming along now and doing gloss work, or certainly alclad, something where you want it to be absolutely perfect, you would see a mark on there. So we'll just literally take these last bits off here. All around this front, on like that, over to the white side, underneath. Okay, and just give it a buff, and this should make us nice and shiny, totally polished underside. And there it is, you might be able to see the reflection of the light on there. Works very, very well, and we have one perfect finished under, and it feels extremely glossy, no problems at all, very happy. So we're going to do the same with this back area as well. Okay, so as you can probably see, we've got all that section done. Tail section isn't on, I'm just playing at the moment just to see how it fits. It all does go on there very, very nicely. So we've polished up, and obviously we've done these top sides, we've done down the front, underneath, and everything else. Now I was going to put that back area back on, but the trouble with that is we need to now remove all of these little guys. Now this is not going to be an easy job by any means. As you can catch there probably in the light, we've got all these little round little riveting. Now the thing is, this is what holds these panels on, because obviously some of them aren't fabric, some of them are on this particular aircraft. So these ones around the front here, I've got these little round discs. Now the trouble with them is they're not exactly brilliant. For the type of scale that we're dealing with, certainly on 1/32 here, they're a little bit plain, and it's something that's going to stand out quite a lot. So what we've actually got, Edard have done a photo etch set for this with these little guys, and you might be able to see these hundreds of little guys on here, on both cams. Now the trouble with them is that they are very, very small, very, very minute, but the level of detail is far better than these little guys. So what we need to do is remove every single one of these round ones on the entire aircraft, and let's face it, it's even underneath down here, and it's right the way obviously on the sides, underneath, things like that. Replace them with these. Now also at the same time, we've got these larger round ones as well, and these are going to go over it just like this. Just like on here, you see, and it covers over that one to add a little bit more detail on that, so that one's got to go on. At the same time, we've got these other ones running down the back, and when you look at the instructions, it gives you a good call out of exactly where they go and what type they actually are. So down the back here, you've actually got some triangle type ones as well. We've got some square ones, we've got ones for the engine cowling and that. So you need to look at your references, because it is just giving a question mark on the actual instructions to which one is which for it. So it might be worth, if you can, have a link at your references. Certainly I'm going to be replacing a lot of them with these round ones rather than the square ones, but in certain areas it does call out for some more of the actual square ones versus the round ones. But there again, you've got certainly lots and lots of them, as you can see on here. So when you're removing them from the fret, just to recap on what we did earlier, I use a pair of Friskus scissors, and they get extremely close in, and you can get right up and make a perfect clean cut. So if we just nip that one off, and then that little guy there, this little guy up here, and this one down the bottom. Now, as you said, two ways of putting this stuff on. You can either go ahead and just pop it on with, that's that one off. You can either go ahead and just pop it on with a little bit of PVA glue or super glue, but it's going to go on and it's going to lay straight on like that. And then obviously straight away you can see, might be able to see on these ones here, we've got a little tiny guy here. If we just bring you in, you can get an idea. You might be able to see it up there on the close-up. This one is going to cover that rivet there, and obviously the one at the top. So we need to remove all of these before we come in, and then it will cover and lay just flat on top. So what we need to do, two ways of doing it. You can either sand them off, come along with your file, and literally say, right, okay, we're going to take him off and just literally give them a bit of a rub. If you have got hold of the thinner sanding sticks, they're great for this type of job. You can come along, and that way you won't damage too much detail everywhere else. So we'll just get rid of this guy here. And I'm going to use an even thinner sanding stick for this one. Okay, and then you can take it completely off, and that's what we need to do. Unfortunately, we're going to lose the line next to it, so what we're going to do is going to add it back in. There we go, you might be able to see that one's totally off just down there. That one's gone now, but obviously we've got a line and it's a slightly raised one running along there. So what I'll probably do is pop back in and just put a panel line back in there, recessed. If you wanted to make it raised, you could use a knife, okay, and then just literally put it back in. And what it does, causes a valley and makes it look like a raised panel line, but just to go down in there, remove them. Or the other way, of course, you can get your blade of your knife, lay it flat on top, okay, come in like this, and then just literally push and clean off. Okay, that's that one done, and this way is a lot quicker, but just remember to keep your knife nice and flat, and then afterwards you can come along with a polishing sanding stick like this and just give it a rub to tidy them up, to make them a lot better, just like that. I know the top camera close-up's having a hard time in with that one, but there we go. It will take care of those. Probably this one might be a bit better. No, not quite close, but there we go. You see, we can get right in there and take them out. So as I said, come along with your knife, pop it in, and then literally just cut them off. Okay, I say just try and keep it as flat as you possibly can. Okay, it's coming back from the other direction. This is the quick way, or as I say, you could do it the other way. Take them out like so, but it may be an idea just to leave a tiny bit of evidence of where they are. That way you know where you've got to put them, because otherwise if you totally remove them you might forget where they are if you've gone around and taken them all off. Okay, and then before you know it, you're in a bit of trouble because you don't know quite where they were. So just keep an eye on where you're going. Okay, but there we go. That's those off just like that. And then we're going to come along, tiny bit of super glue. So if we just do one or two just here. So what we do, we just pull this out of thing. Just grabbing a little bit of tape. I'm not going to need much, just down here. Pop it over here. Okay, bit of glue just on. Okay, and then what we do, we just snip a couple out just to show. And these are extremely fine and fiddly to snip off, so just take your time with this. This is going to be one of those which is going to be a couple of evenings or a day project to do. Trust me guys, it hopefully will be really, really worth it in the end. So what we do, we just grab we've got one here. Okay, so we'll just pop this little guy back in this one. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put the glue on first. So if we bring it nice and close within here, I'm going to pop in, glue is going to go on first, just literally a tiny amount, just like that. Okay, and then what we want to do, we've got him lifted up just like this. Okay, then we're going to come along and tap him down and replace him with that one. Now this is, as I said, going to be a long old job, but if you can see that one compared to those others, it really will make the difference. And what we'll do, we'll pop that panel line back in there. So what I'm going to do now is probably spend the next couple of hours going down, completely redoing the surface. But as I say, I'm going to use super glue. You could use PVA. Trouble with PVA, if you knock it, you might lose it afterwards, and that could be a real headache. So let's say, take your time, check your references for which type you want to use, and we're going to work our way right the way around the entire model. Okay, so as you can see, we've moved on just a little bit with a few bits and pieces. Now we've got all this on there now. To tell you the truth, it goes on for absolute ages putting all these on, but it's one of those ones, just work through it methodically. The instructions are a little bit vague on how it goes together, and trying to get reference photos to be able to see this clearly is a little bit tricky. So if I give you a bit of a run through of actually what we've got here. Anywhere where there's a long line, we've got one of these triangle ones in. Okay, now these triangle ones, the great thing about them is that obviously they're just for a normal flat piece. Okay, now what we've actually got then, we've gone around and we've put in anywhere where there is like a squared off join, things like that, we've got a square one in. Anywhere else we've got little round ones. Now I have lost a couple during, because I've had pegs on and things like that and knocked them off, so I'm going to have to come back and pop these in. Okay, now we've glued this under section into place, straightforward, goes in, very nice fit, no need for filler or anything else like that. And we've put this top on there. This is the roof support obviously for the main wing spar running up the top, and obviously it covers up the fuel tanks. And again, we've gone in there and put some little ones in there and taken care of that. As I say, used a couple of rubber bands on here just to pull this together and get those done. We've put the little deflector on the top here that just glues into the back there. We haven't put, there's a couple of little other bits to go on the top here, we'll worry about them afterwards and go through those. On the underside, exactly the same. We went around and we've removed, and we've done all these down the back here of re-putting all those in, nicely sanded off and done. So we're very happy how that's all completely worked out. Now, as you can see on this side, we're just putting in here this spar that runs down. So we've got the other one here. So what we need to do, got a small little seam line runs down here. So what we need to do is just take that off. So we've just got a very fine sanding stick. So we just want to take those out of the way so they're not doing, and that's just obviously the mould seam, how it all comes together. And then we just use the polishing one to make sure we're all happy. Okay, now to get this in here is a bit of a fiddly trick. The other side went in quite tricky, so what we're going to do is obviously we're going to dry fit it and just try and get it in here one way, and that one goes in a lot easier, to be honest, than the other. So that one is in there now, just in. So what we'll do, we'll come along with the glue. I'm just going to plenty of it and let that flood in through the top to that entire area, into all those parts. Let that dry a little bit, and then what we can do, we can just work it down, put it under these spar supports running underneath. Okay, we're just going to hold them gently into position, and between the two it puts it into a nice area. So we just hold that now just for a couple of minutes to get them to dry. Now, I said before, the tail section's all completely done. Okay, so that's going to be a straightforward fit. That's just going to come in the right way up, in like this. We'll glue that into position, same with the rudder. I'm not going to do it yet, just until we get the other bits done. In the meantime, we've obviously removed all the detail off of this front nose ring from around the engine, and we replaced it again with photo etch parts, which are a lot better, to be honest, than the other one. We've got the engine is also all built up and ready to go as well, but the thing is, what we're going to do is detail that up quite a bit, because obviously on the front we're going to do that separately, so we're not going to worry about the instructions on that part for the moment. As things have been drying, I put the wing sections together. We need to obviously tidy them up. Make sure you do open up all the holes as required underneath for this, because as I say, there's quite a few holes for obviously the bombs and things, so work out your load first perhaps, and you can work out those bits and pieces. So we've also done the top of the actual box system. Now this is the one that's going to fit nicely onto the top here. Okay, and that's going to come in just like this. It's done. Very simple, two halves come together and we put these wings. Again, we just need to open up these little edges just a little bit to make sure they're on. But as you can see now, we're certainly coming together and looking the business. And we've got all these bits drying, which are all the major areas, if you like. So we just put a little bit of glue just around these areas around here to make sure they're all finished off nicely. Okay, so we've got those bits done now. As I said, once those are totally dry, we just add on those little bits we've just managed to knock off, which I've still got down here. Luckily, they haven't gone too far. But these little ones for the round ones, we've used every single one of these photo etch round ones. The others, to be honest, we've got lots left over. So if I've got it right, I'm not sure, but you know, from what I'm looking at, it seems to be right. So if I'm slightly wrong, I do apologise. But from references I've got and things like that, it seems to be okay. So what we're going to do, we're going to clean up these wings, make sure we're seamless. Obviously, got to be seamless, these, because these are material. Any filler that's needed, exactly the same way, a little bit of Mr. Surfacer, we'll put them on, we'll polish them up and everything else. We're not going to put any photo etch parts onto this as the rigging yet, because obviously we want to paint it all, but we are going to probably paint it as sections. The most complicated bit for the painting is going to be this one getting in here, so we're going to have to mask off this strut area before we paint the actual area. But it's all little things we can work with. We'll get there quite easily. So what we're going to do, clean up those bits, get those bits done, the wing section, and next we can move on to doing the engine.